60 years of gospel music leaves behind more than songs. It leaves behind the evidence of what a person actually believed. And for Bill Gaither, that evidence runs across more than 700 compositions that have shaped how millions of people understand Christian faith, worship, and the mercy of God. At 89 years old, he finally said out loud what every one of those songs had already been saying on his behalf. And once you hear it, the entire catalog takes on a different weight entirely. Alexandria, Indiana built him before any studio or stage got the chance. His family's Christian faith ran deep, and gospel music in that household wasn't Sunday performance or background sound. It moved through daily life the way weather moves through a farming community, constant and meaningful and impossible to separate from everything else. Bill absorbed it the way children absorb their mother tongue, without trying to. And by the time he understood what that music was doing to him, it had already done most of its work. Southern gospel, hymns, Christian worship traditions, none of these were things he chose. They found him first, and they built something inside him that a classroom, a career, or a paycheck was never going to satisfy. The path from that small Indiana town to becoming ASCAP's Christian Songwriter of the Century didn't run straight. Gaither became an English teacher at Alexandria High School first, genuinely connecting with students in ways that required the same attentiveness to language and human need that his songwriting would later demand. Both callings shared more than they appeared to. Both demanded precision with language and a real understanding of what people need to hear and when. But underneath the classroom work, the songs kept building pressure, and no teaching position fully released it. That tension between the practical life he was living and the creative calling pressing against it from inside is something millions of people who later found comfort in his music would recognize immediately as their own. Gloria Sickle changed the direction of everything when she and Bill married in 1962, and that's when the real collision happened. What followed wasn't simply two people building a life together, though that was real and genuine. It was a meeting of two complementary gifts that produced something neither of them could have reached alone. She brought a poet's precision and a theologian's seriousness to every collaboration. Bill carried a musician's instinct for where a melody needs to breathe and where it needs to push, and Gloria's encouragement to stop treating songwriting as a secondary occupation redirected not just his career, but gospel music itself, though nobody quite grasped the scale of that at the time. He Touched Me arrived in 1963. And what made it land so hard in churches across the world was exactly what made it appear almost too simple on the surface. Those two words at the center of the chorus named something most people had experienced and almost no one had found language for. That specific moment when the presence of something greater than yourself stops being theoretical and becomes undeniable. People singing it in pews, from small Midwestern churches to major urban congregations, weren't performing someone else's story. They were finally singing their own, and the relief written across their faces was visible from the front of any room where it played. Christian music had given congregations a language for personal transformation that the church didn't know it was missing until it arrived. Because He Lives came from a harder place, and that harder place is exactly what gives it its staying power. Gloria was pregnant, and instead of uncomplicated joy, both she and Bill sat with genuine fear about the world their child was entering. The late 1960 seconds fractured along every fault line that societies fracture along, and none of that chaos stopped at the doors of devout households. What came out of that honest reckoning became one of the most enduring hymns in Christian worship history. Those lines, Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone, weren't written from easy certainty. They came up from the same place doubt lives, which is precisely why they've reached so many people in their most fearful moments, and why they've never stopped working across decades and denominations. Over the years that followed, song after song accumulated in the Gaither catalog until the total exceeded 700 compositions. 700 separate acts of creative and spiritual labor. 700 times sitting down to find words and melody equal to something true, and then giving that truth freely to whoever needed it. Very few artists in any genre reach that number while maintaining consistent quality. The Gaithers did it across 6 decades, and the catalog still holds. What kept that music from aging the way most music ages isn't simply that the songs are good, though they are. Good songs date all the time. The deeper answer is theological. Gloria and Bill weren't writing catchy expressions of general religious sentiment. Their compositions engaged the actual core concerns of Christian faith: personal transformation, resurrection, hope, the grace available to the irreparably broken, with enough specificity and honesty that nothing about them could be dismissed as decoration. The real things don't date, and music built directly around the real things doesn't either. Churches that adopted every new musical trend kept the old Gaither songs anyway, not out of nostalgia, but because those compositions fill something that newer worship music hasn't yet found a way to replace. The Gaither Homecoming series launched in 1991, and what nobody expected was how completely it would resonate with audiences far beyond anything a commercial formula could have predicted. The concept held a deceptive simplicity: gather gospel music legends together, many of them elderly and largely sidelined by an industry that had moved on. Put them in a room with microphones and let them sing and remember without theatrical staging or commercial packaging. What came back from that room was something audiences recognized instantly as rare, the kind of authentic warmth no production budget manufactures and no algorithm replicates. That first homecoming video spread through the Christian community, person to person, before viral sharing was a concept anyone had words for, growing into one of the most beloved franchises in gospel music history, without ever compromising the simplicity that made it work. One thing the homecoming recordings accomplished that deserves its own recognition was the restoration of dignity to artists who had given everything to gospel music and then found themselves largely forgotten. Vestal Goodman, Jake Hess, J.D. Sumner, singers who had carried the tradition when it needed carrying most, were brought back to center stage and treated not as nostalgic footnotes, but as the legends they genuinely were. Younger performers on those recordings revered them visibly, and you could see in the footage what it meant to older artists to be surrounded by people who understood what they had built and honored it without hesitation. Bill Gaither gave them that, and in doing so, preserved something in gospel music that would otherwise have slipped quietly between generations, with no one noticing until it was already gone. His work developing younger artists carries equal weight in understanding what his career actually was. Mark Lowry, David Phelps, Guy Penrod, Wes Hampton, these names carry real significance in contemporary Christian music, and all of them credit Gaither with the platform and guidance that shaped what their careers became. The pattern repeated consistently for decades. Find talented people who have something real to give. Offer them a stage and honest challenge from someone who genuinely believes in what they're capable of. Then step back and let them work. That generosity wasn't incidental to his success. It was one of its primary engines, and it still drives gospel music forward through artists he helped build who are now building others in exactly the same spirit. ASCAP named Bill Gaither the Christian Songwriter of the Century more than 2 decades ago, and that recognition lands differently when set beside what he has said about his own creative approach. Gloria and I have constantly zeroed in on what the message is, he put it plainly. The music package is just the wrapper. It carries the message in all different kinds of styles. That's as clean and direct as his best lyrics, and it carries the same quality that makes those lyrics last. Fame was never the organizing principle. The message was, and the recognition arrived as a consequence rather than a goal, which is precisely why it never corrupted what the music was doing. At 89, the Gaither Gospel Hour on TBN represents a new delivery system for that same message. Launching a television program with genuine enthusiasm at that age says something about a person that biography paragraphs struggle to capture. Something about Saturday night and gospel music, Bill reflected, is that people who follow Jesus on Saturday night need a little gospel music before Sunday morning's preaching arrives. That pastoral attentiveness to what people actually need and when they need it has been the quiet intelligence behind every project he has undertaken across 6 decades of Christian ministry. What Bill Gaither admitted at 89 wasn't a revelation in the sense of something hidden finally surfacing. Every song he and Gloria ever wrote already contained the same confession. The music was too honest, too specific about real human experience, too clearly indifferent to the polish that serves celebrity rather than ministry, for it to have come from someone building a career around fame. His admission that fame was never the point doesn't diminish what he achieved. It explains everything. The music lasted because it was never about the musician, and the legacy endures because it was always, without exception, about the message and the people who needed to hear it. As long as those people exist, and they always will, the songs will keep finding them in the places where music lives longest.